Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking something that is profoundly, almost universally misunderstood: the psychology of narcissism and the actual mechanics of narcissistic abuse. Have you ever looked at a toxic relationship from the outside and wondered, how on earth does someone get trapped in that? I mean, it often seems totally baffling to the rational mind, right? Well, today we're stripping away all that confusion. We're going to map out the exact hidden mechanics of how these toxic dynamics function. Trust me, it's going to be incredibly eye-opening.
Think about this for a second. Why do we immediately blame ourselves when the abuse leaves absolutely no visible scars? It's a profound paradox. When a person experiences psychological manipulation, the emotional fallout and the confusion are just incredibly heavy. And yet, the very first instinct is almost always intense self-blame. Why is that? Why do we immediately point the finger inward? Well, as we'll see throughout the course of this explainer, that self-blame isn't just some accidental byproduct of a bad relationship. It's an intentional feature. It's entirely by design.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. The Mask of Covert Manipulation, Defining the Hidden Threat.
You know, when we hear the word narcissist in pop culture, we usually picture someone who's outwardly arrogant, loud, or maybe just obsessed with looking in the mirror. But the real danger often lies in the covert aspect of narcissistic personality disorder. Covert manipulation is this deeply psychological maneuvering that just flies completely under the radar. It's incredibly subtle. It's often disguised as care or concern, and it's precisely this hidden nature that makes it so effective and so damaging. You literally don't see the manipulation coming because it doesn't look like an attack until you're already deeply entangled in the web.
Moving right along to Section 2. The 3-Stage Abuse Cycle, How the Trap is Set.
Narcissistic abuse isn't just random, chaotic behavior. It actually follows a deeply predictable 3-step chronological playbook. Let's walk through it together. Step 1 is idealization. You might have heard this called the love bombing phase. You're put on this massive pedestal, showered with attention, and made to feel like you're the absolute center of the universe. It feels too good to be true. And then suddenly we hit step 2, devaluation. The pedestal is just violently kicked right out from under you. You're criticized, diminished. Your reality is constantly questioned, and you're made to feel worthless. Finally, there's step 3, discard. You are coldly cast aside when you no longer serve a purpose or provide what's known as narcissistic supply. These massive, dizzying highs, followed immediately by plunging, freezing lows, create just utter, debilitating confusion for the person caught in the middle.
So how does this actually trap you? Well, these specific stages work together to construct a literal psychological cage around the victim. It's those sudden, jarring shifts from intense idealization to cold devaluation that keep a person completely off balance. The sudden withholding of affection becomes this incredibly powerful weapon of control. You end up spending all your mental and emotional energy trying to figure out what you did wrong, desperately trying to get back to step 1, that beautiful idealization phase. But instead of resolution, you're just met with the ultimate, confusing discard. The logic here is brutal but unfortunately highly effective. By keeping you desperate for the good times to return, the cycle ensures you stay trapped, constantly doubting your own actions and your own reality.
Which brings us to Section 3, the invisible scars of abuse, the burden of proof.
Physical abuse leaves visible scars. Psychological abuse leaves no visible scars. I know it sounds like such an obvious distinction, right? But the psychological implications of this are absolutely staggering. Because there's no physical evidence, no bruises to point to, no broken bones to show a doctor, victims of narcissistic abuse are often left carrying the burden of proof entirely in their own minds. And what happens when you can't point to a tangible, physical injury to validate your pain? You internalize it. You look around, you see zero physical proof of harm, and so you just assume the problem must be you. The total absence of physical evidence is exactly why victims internalize the blame. The invisible nature of the scars is the very thing that makes the psychological damage so incredibly insidious.
Let's shift gears and look at Section 4, empathy, target, not a flaw, shifting the paradigm.
You didn't attract a narcissist because you're broken. I really want you to let that sink in for a moment. For anyone who has ever survived this cycle, the default, underlying assumption is almost always that there is something fundamentally wrong with them. They genuinely believe they're damaged goods, and that their internal brokenness acted like a magnet for all this toxic behavior. But the source material completely and fundamentally flips this script.
You attracted one because you're empathetic, and empathy is a target, not a flaw. This is the paradigm shift right here. Empathy is the exact specific asset the narcissist was hunting for. Think back to the mechanics we just learned. Narcissists require constant emotional supply, nonstop validation, and someone who is willing to endure the devaluation cycle. Who better to provide that than someone with a deep, natural, profound capacity for empathy? Your compassion, your endless willingness to understand another person, your drive to heal and fix, these are absolutely not symptoms of being broken. They are beautiful, high-value qualities that were simply exploited. They targeted your greatest strengths, not your weaknesses.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought. How can you reframe your empathy as your greatest strength today? If you, or maybe someone you know, has survived this cycle, remember this: your empathy didn't break you. It just survived an incredibly hostile environment. Once you understand the hidden mechanics of the trap, you can finally stop blaming yourself for falling into it. It is time to take that narrative of victimhood, flip it totally on its head, and step into absolute empowerment. Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep learning, keep growing, and always keep asking the right questions.